Hey guys, Spud here, and today we're flying over the beautiful mountains of the Afghanistan map to go over a huge gotcha that can definitely get you killed while flying the DCS F-4E Phantom II, and is a gotcha that almost got me killed in my last Sunday mission. I was coming off the target after employing some AGM-68 standard arms against a SAM site when I was bounced by a flight of MiG-19s. And unfortunately, this gotcha prevented me from taking a perfectly set up AIM-7 shot, a perfectly set up AIM-9 Sidewinder shot, and a perfectly set up snapshot with my gun. And luckily for me, I had an air-to-air tasked F-15 Eagle that was able to shoot a MiG-19 off of my tail and allow me to run for a tanker as I got tangled in a dogfight to try and save my own life that I definitely did not have the gas for. So let's jump in the cockpit and go over this gotcha and explain what can prevent you from using air-to-air weapons here in the F4 after using smart weapons like the AGM-65 Maverick, laser-guided bombs of all types and flavors, as well as arms such as the AGM-45 Shrike and AGM-78 Standard Arm. Okay guys, now that we're back in the cockpit of our F4, let's go ahead and set things up for the employment of our AGM-65 Mavericks, so that way we can explain this gotcha that prevents us from using our air-to-air weapons if our switches are not set correctly, and explain why this occurs, so that way we can develop a better understanding and hopefully prevent this from happening in the future. So we'll first bring our LCOS sight to air-to-ground mode, and we'll depress our reticle 45 mils, to slave our pipper dot right to the center of the field of view of our AGM-65 seeker head. We'll go ahead and select our various stations we want armed. Our weapon selector is already in TV mode. We'll set our delivery mode to direct, master arm to on, our DSCG scope to TV, and we're going to squeeze the trigger to activate the seeker head of one of our scene magnified Mavericks. Now, the reason why, at this point, with our weapons selector set to TV, we cannot use our air-to-air weapons is the fact that our trigger on our stick here is slave to a function that has to do with our smart weapons. This will occur whether you are employing LGBs, AGM-65s, or any of the anti-radiation missiles the F-4E has available to it, whether you're just using the Shrike that's available by default, or using one of the modded-in AGM-78 standard arms. Now, the reason why air-to-air weapons are slave to the trigger on our stick here in the Phantom is because, of course, our F-4E here comes from the long family line of F-4s that originally started being built for the Navy as the F-4H-1, that became the F-4A post-1962, the F-4H-2, which became the F-4B post-1962, and so on and so forth. And as the family of F-4s kept on continuing down the line, the aircrafts stayed with the conventional kind of tradition of U.S. Navy-built aircraft being using the trigger on the stick for forward-firing weapons such as rockets, guns, and air-to-air missiles. And here in the F4, with more smarter weapons retrofitted to the aircraft, because our trigger has additional functionality while we're using weapons like the AGM-65, we are unable to fire our gun, Sidewinders, or Sparrows. And this is exactly the gotcha that tripped me up in the last Sunday mission and almost got me killed by a MiG-19 farmer. So let's kind of show that in action here. So if I am to squeeze the trigger with my gun selected, I am unable to fire the gun, as we can see here. I'm constantly and repeatedly squeezing the trigger. This is also true if we were to set our weapon selector to the ARM or anti-radiation missile section. So again, I'm squeezing my trigger repeatedly, and we cannot fire the gun. Now, if we were to bring our weapons selector to the rockets and dispensers section, boom, we can fire our gun. Bombs section, boom, we can fire our gun. Bullpup selection, we can fire our gun. A, B, C, we can fire our gun. Back to TV, and nope, we cannot fire our gun anymore. And that is, of course, also true for our Sidewinders and our Sparrows as well. And this is the gotcha that almost got me killed. You just have to definitely remember to set your weapon selector to anything but ARM or TV. And of course, that sounds simple enough, correct? However, when you're in the heat of battle and there's SAMs being fired at you, and there's MiGs trying to intercept you, and you're trying to talk on the radio to your wingmen and keep track of them, you're trying to talk to the AWACS controller and get a beat on where those MiGs that are trying to get you actually are, get yourself lined up, and of course, then try to set up a perfect shot for a Sparrow, a Sidewinder, or even your gun. It can be extremely easy to forget to move your weapon selector switch. So let's reset the mission here and kind of show it in action and show you guys that it can be a little bit more stressful and a little bit easier to forget in the heat of battle. Alright guys, our mission file is reset and our cockpit is all pre-set up for the employment of our AGM-65 Mavericks. And our target today is a couple of IL-76s on the ramp at Jalalabad Air Base here on the Afghanistan map. And once we hit our target, a couple of MiG-21s should spawn in and jump us, and we'll have to defend ourselves from those MiGs without falling victim to the gotcha that we talked about in the first part of today's video. Now, this may seem very trivial and straightforward, but keep in mind that when you're in the heat of battle, talking to your wingmen, talking to the AWACS, flying your jet, keeping track of where the good guys and the bad guys are, this can be a very, very easy thing to miss. So let's go ahead and start maneuvering our aircraft for the employment of our Mavericks by first picking off the autopilot, and we will reset the master caution. And I'm going to come off to the right-hand side of our target here, as I like to go back to the very basic dictums of employing air-to-ground weapons to make employing AGM-65 Mavericks as easy as possible. I like to have a nice steep dive down onto the target, and then I like to turn the autopilot on as I'm in that dive to allow me to concentrate on locking the seeker head of the Maverick onto our target. And of course, to get a nice deep dive as easy as possible, we want to employ a nice, good, solid roll-in maneuver. So we can see our targets just behind that little cloud there. I can start to see some fires from previous strikes on the airfield. I'm just looking to kind of maneuver the target as close to the canopy sill as possible, and then once it hits the canopy bow, I'll start the roll-in maneuver, and that should give us a good 30 to 40 degree dive angle. Alright. So that is starting to look pretty darn good. And we'll go ahead and start the roll-in. Bring the power back to full mil. Bring the LCOS sight right to my target. Bring the autopilot on. Concentrate on the Mavericks. One's away. Fuse away. Autopilot off, and I'm going to roll away from my target to throw off the aim of any gunners that are down there. And we can start to see that a couple of MiGs have popped up on our RWR over here. Now this is where things start to get very, very tricky, right? Because if we've just accomplished that attack run with our Mavericks, and now we're looking around trying to find our wingmen so that way we can stay coordinated with them, we're communicating with them, we're flying our own jet, trying not to get hit by the SAMs and the AAA that's around our target down there, and now, oh my gosh, there's MiGs that are coming after us. So let's go ahead and call up our AIC and get a bogey dope to those MiGs here. Now, if we are unsure as to whether or not those MiGs are hot on us, I recommend always going ahead and turning into them if it's safe and you're not going to trespass into the wez of a SAM site, so that way you're already in an offensive posture and you're not going to get caught on your back foot. So let's go ahead and start the turn. AWACS and bogey dope. Alright, there's 040 for 30 at 15,000, hot. So our nose is more or less pointed at the bandits at this point. So now it's all about resetting up the cockpit so that way we can employ our air-to-air weapons effectively, and we won't be squeezing the trigger and getting super frustrated and throwing out a whole bunch of swear words because we can't shoot the bad guy. So we'll go ahead, and if we need to, we can always throw the autopilot on and trim out the jet. So we'll make sure that we bring our selector switch to any position other than ARM or TV. Now, a good check to make sure that you've done this correctly, and this is something I failed to do in my last Sunday mission and was the massive cause of that frustration and almost got me killed by that MiG-29 or MiG-19, was the fact that I didn't look to check to see that the amber arm light underneath my gun select button on the station select button panel was illuminated. If I had checked this, then it would have been no problem, and I would have realized that my gun was not going to fire, which also means that my sidewinders and my sparrows are not going to fire either. So that is a really good check to double check you have all your switches set and ready to go for an air-to-air engagement. So we'll unpause here, and we'll have Jester go to bore sight mode. We'll bring our radar back to our DSCG scope. And the good thing here is we are slightly below the altitude of the enemy MiGs, and that's going to make it much, much easier for us to lock the MiGs in bore sight mode and hopefully take a BVR shot with our AIM-7 Sparrows. I'm going to bring the inner lock of my AIM-7s out because I find that that makes it much, much easier to use the weapons. And we'll have Jester lock a bandit. I have him unlock, and we'll get a better lock here. Okay. There we go. That's looking better. Looks like we got the left one locked up. And we can obviously see them visually at this point.
Okay, breaking lock. Okay. Locked bogey.
That's a better lock. Okay, so looks like it's no good.
There are bandits. 12 o'clock. 3 miles.
And Fox 1. Splash 1. We're looking for the other bandit.
The bandit is going down.
To the top. Page mode, auto acquisition mode on the radar. Got some good separation this time. Fox 2. And splash. Got him. Alrighty, guys. So that was a bit of an exciting dogfight there. But I hope this gives you guys some good tips and tricks to avoid this definitely deadly gotcha if you're employing smart weapons like AGM-65 Mavericks, LGBs, or anti-radiation missiles in the F4, and you do get bounced by MiGs. Always, always, always keep in mind that if you have your gun selected, a very, very good kind of double, triple check that you have your weapon select switch in the correct position to actually be able to employ those weapons is this amber arm light underneath the gun select button. So hopefully today's video helped you guys out, and I hope you guys all enjoy this beautiful game, and we'll see you in the next one. Please give a like and a subscribe, and fly safe out there.